Most small businesses spend their time and money focused on generating awareness of their business, but real growth comes from understanding every stage of the sales funnel. In this episode, we break down ways to look at awareness, consideration, and conversion, but also introduce two new areas you need to focus on: trial and lifetime value. Simple data and a little analysis may uncover some new ways to look at your business and also uncover some areas you need to pay a little more attention to in the new year. He's Matt Hansen. How you doing, Matt?
I am good.
And I'm Jim Deedlow. Is my mic at a good level? Okay, cool. And we are on the campus of Purdue Northwest, and we're talking mostly about just local marketing for you, your small and medium-sized business. I want to say thank you to Adriana Alvarez, who puts all these podcasts together, produces them, and distributes them. And we're going to be getting her some help here, I think. But, Matt, we've been doing this a while. We started out with this topic, and I'm pushing you to revisit it. It is the sales funnel. Can you revisit what it is?
Yeah, so, we've talked about the sales funnel for many, many times, whether we're on air or whether we're off, but really it comes down to a couple different things, right? So from a small, medium-sized business, many times we're focusing on the awareness, right? So people understanding who you are, where you are, all of those types of things. But what you see most of the time is large companies they already have the awareness and they're focused more on the consideration, which is that next step, right? So consideration, is this a product or service that is going to satisfy a need? And then we move into being an actual customer. So those are kind of the three that we've talked about in the past, but I did want to, add a couple more things to talk about today. And that's why I mentioned, or why in the description, we've got trial and lifetime value. So we're going to kind of go through them and make them a little bit more relatable in a non-business sense, but we'll get to that in a second.
Once again, if you happen to be getting this on live radio, this is the Mastering Local Marketing Podcast. We're on episode 95, so you can go into Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Tell your friends, please like us. We're just talking specifically about local marketing. Matt's been doing digital marketing since before it was a thing, and I own radio stations and a sports streaming system, and we're in the marketing space all the time. So when we started the podcast, was one of the first few episodes. For many of you, it really just hit home. You really can't conceive of the process for... That is our producer telling me I'm clanking my coffee cup again. I can't get away from it. Sorry about it. She brought me a pad there for the thing. But it struck a chord with me and with other small businesses. There's a funnel, and at the top of the funnel is awareness. You got to create awareness of your business. Then you kind of get somebody down into the middle of the funnel. They're considering your business. And then finally, the bottom stage, the three-step process, is they're a customer. But let's go back to awareness. You got 10 to 30% written down here. What does that mean?
Yeah, so local businesses typically have a 10 to 30% awareness of their customer base. So when you talk about a Nike or a Red Bull or something like that, a large company, their awareness is upwards, and it's in the 90%, right? So they've spent millions and millions of dollars to generate that much awareness. So if you talk to somebody about Nike or Red Bull or Apple or any of these kind of large companies, most people, if not all people, know who they are. I always say there's some people hiding in a cave somewhere that don't necessarily know. That's fine, whatever. They're probably not our customers, but when you are talking about a small or a medium-sized business, there are only so many customers that are people that can become your customers. So if you're selling in a local retail shop, or you're a local HVAC, or something that you're serving a populated area of, let's call it 20, 30 miles out, odds are you're not selling to people across the nation, across the world, those types of things. So you have this small kind of intimate amount of potentials. And when you start talking to them, you think that everyone knows who you are, everyone knows your business and all those types of things. But when you actually go out there and you start talking and asking people, do you know this business? Not the people that you surround yourself with, but the people that are in a grocery store, walking down the street or whatever, just people you interact with every single day. You're going to see typically 10 to 30% will actually know who you are, right? So that's what I mean by 10 to 30%. Understand where you lay, where you lie in terms of that percentage. You're never going to get to 90% unless you're spending significant amount of money, which you could do, but the average is 10 to 30%.
So we're talking about the top of the funnel. That's awareness. Let's go to the second stage, consideration. People are comparing you. They're, well, what do I think of them? Maybe they read some Google reviews, that kind of thing. But you're in the consideration stage, and what does that mean for the small to medium-sized business?
Yeah, so many times, companies will put stuff out there, and they're trying to generate awareness of their brand, and that's great, right? So again, we get you to that 10 to 30%, and people know who you are. Now, you have to start to look at this a little bit differently, right? So awareness is one thing, but consideration is something different. So I'm aware of a bunch of different companies, but I may not necessarily have a need for all of those companies, right? So I'm aware of the countless new car dealers that go up and down the street here, right, all the way to South Lake County, right? But am I in the market for a car right now? No, right? So I'm not necessarily considering anything and shopping for anything. But when I do, right, there are certain car brands that I probably will never buy again. I've purchased in the past. I'm aware of them. I'm not considering them the next time I go look for a car, right? I've read reviews. I've had personal experience, whatever it may be. So when we work down that funnel, I'm aware of all of these brands, but I won't consider each and every one of these brands. So just because you throw 100 people into the awareness category doesn't mean that 100 people are going to consider buying from you as you work down this funnel. So, you have to look at that and go, all right, from an awareness standpoint, it's just, do they know who I am? From a consideration standpoint, they have pain points, and now you have to solve those pain points. So the messaging becomes differently, right? So most companies will talk about them, like the actual company in the awareness stage. What we have to realize is when you get into consideration, it's no longer about you. It's about what you're solving for that customer or that potential customer, because that's how you get into the consideration side. I've done this with countless companies through the years, and we build the awareness, and then we get to the consideration side, and you have all of these preconceived perceptions in your mind, right? So maybe mom and dad years ago had a bad experience with this company, right? I say car insurance is always kind of one, right? So nobody wants to think about car insurance. Typically, I'm aware of all these different car insurance brands. When I consider it, typically what I do is I look at what mom and dad had, or my brother or sister have, or somebody that I know what they have. And that's where things start to change a little bit as we go through this. So you pay attention. Again, awareness is just getting your name out there, but consideration is going a little bit deeper, understanding the pain points that they have and solving those pain points. So it's less about you and it's more about them and the solutions that you can provide to them.
So we've talked about the funnel, awareness, consideration, customer. We'll do those three, and then we're going to go slice in and add a couple of layers to that. Customer.
Right. So you've given me a hard time about my fence purchase, right? So remember we were going through that whole process. So we were looking for a fence to put on a property that we own, and we had gone through. We were looking at all these different companies, and then we kind of looked at what each one had to offer, and we had some people out, and we were doing that shopping part, and we ended up purchasing, right? So we're now a customer, and we've got this fence, and there were 3 or 4 other companies that we had come out, and really when it comes down to it, we were looking at a variety of things, obviously price, type of fence that they have, the whole process, like, Is this, how much do they need up front? Do they need it all up, the whole money, everything up front, or is it, whatever, right? Like all of these different variables play into when you're considering and then moving towards the customer side of things. So the company that we went with, we started working with them and we said, well, we would like this and we would like this. And, there's some specialty things that we're looking at. This one that we went with came up with a kind of a neat idea to solve a problem that we had. And we said, okay, well, let's go with you because that sounds better than what we're getting from the other ones because they were just kind of giving us some, kind of hokey solution to it. So we became a customer of them. Right now, there's things that we've got to call them back on and this and that and whatever else. But, the idea is the fact that we made a choice based on we had all of these things that we wanted to have done, and we made a choice from 3-4 different companies, and we became a customer. So now in the future, we start to look at it and we say, okay, well, one, I'm watching them put in the fence, and there are certain ways that they're doing it that I've never seen before. Okay, is that good or bad? I don't know. I'm not a fence, installer, so I don't know these things. But now I'm in that evaluation phase, right? So as it starts to go, is the fence going to hold up? Is it going to start to, we have this 8-foot gate that we put in so we could bring things in and out. Is that, you've seen it a million times where a gate like that starts to get it starts to fall and sag, like all these things. So now it's that evaluations part where I'm looking at it and, do we buy another fence in the future? We move, from our current house to somewhere else. Like, are we going to be a customer of them for life, right? So, we've, again, awareness, we were considering 4 different options we purchased from this one. So again, there's probably 25 different fence companies that we looked at. We looked at 4 to consider. We purchased from one, and where we go from there is we'll see as we go.
All right, so let's look at this is at my behest. I'm like, let's review the sales funnel. And a lot of people stepped in and we got kind of advanced. We're back to the very basic part of mastering local marketing. Awareness, 10 to 30%, you're okay. If you got better than that, then you start and you get people somehow by creating that awareness. Now all of a sudden they're in the market for a fence and they are considering you, partly because you have created that awareness. But you have to bridge them somehow to become the bottom of the funnel, the customer. Awareness, consideration, customer. There is a stage there that is as crucial to this process as any other stage, and that is bridging that consideration to customer, and that is the stage that you want to talk about right now.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to dissect it a little bit more, and I like to throw in trial, right? So you try something, try a company. So I know larger ticket items like a fence and HVAC and stuff like that, you don't necessarily try before you buy. But, if you're talking about a restaurant or you go into a store for the first time, a retail store, I'm going to go see what it's all about. And you walk in there or you walk into a restaurant and you try the food for the first time. You have to realize that not everybody that walks in your door is going to come back, right? So I'm aware your store or your restaurant is there. I've considered coming into your restaurant or your store to see what you have. I walk in the doors, which means I'm walking around, and I may purchase something from your store, right? I get a hamburger or something from your restaurant, and I try it, and okay, it's okay, right? Will I be back? I don't know. So there's a whole experience level there that you have to understand is that I come in, I try your product, I try your service, I try your retail location, I want to see what you have, and you really don't have anything that's relevant to my likes, my needs. I won't be back. So I'll never become a customer at that point. So I've considered come in, I'm trying to find something, like there's that whole trial period. Maybe I'm interacting in some capacity. I'm trying your food at the restaurant for the first time and it's no good, or the service is horrible, or I waited an hour and a half to get food, or my drinks never came. I won't be back. So I become a customer. So, they're tied together, but I won't become a long-term customer. And what we're really looking for, we don't want to sell somebody once and never see them again. We want to have customers that continue to come back to us over and over and over again, because that's what we get to the final part of what I want to introduce today is the lifetime value of a customer. So if somebody walks through your store or your restaurant and they spend $50 one time and you never see them again, that's not very valuable to you. But if they spend $50 with you and they come back 3, 4, 5 times that year and spend an additional $50 every single year, and the lifetime value or even the annual value of that customer is $250, $300, they're much more beneficial to you than having to go through this whole sales funnel again and say, all right, well, let's go find more people to generate awareness to, more people to find, to get to consideration, and more people to hopefully try us in the future. Your entire goal should be, once we get them in the door and we sell them on something, is how do we get them to come back over and over and over again? So what I see many times is people burn bridges. They don't, they miss certain steps in how to keep that customer happy. And using the restaurant example is classic. The service is slow. There's too many people. They're trying to wait on too many people all at once. They're trying to conserve costs on the wait staff. Maybe you've dummied down the food menu to save costs on something, and all of a sudden the food that was really good a while back just tastes frozen at this point. We have, I know there are countless restaurants that we used to just go to all the time, and the food has just gotten, it tastes like you're eating at home at this point. So what's the point? I'll throw some pasta in and cook it at home, and that's really what we're getting when we go to the restaurant. So there's no ambiance. There's no you just don't feel special when you go to these places. So why am I going to pay 3 times the price for what I can do at home? And I think that's what, from a business owner's perspective, we get away from it too often. We try to conserve costs and we don't think about the experience that a customer is getting, because it's cheaper to keep a customer happy that's coming back than it is to go out there and find more and more customers to generate awareness, consideration, and then get them into the customer segment.
So let's slice it up, and that is we still have awareness, which leads to consideration. But then you basically, and then if it works, they become your customer. But there's 2 kind of linkages here. And one is when they first come in, and what is the experience? What is the product? Or, somebody buys shoes. I buy Thursday boots. And they're really good at the entire life cycle funnel, in that they made me aware by my son-in-law coming from New York City. And he's like, man, you got to look at these boots. And I'm like, okay, now I'm aware of them. And I went on there, and I went on their website one time. Now I can't go anywhere else on a website without getting Thursday boots. And then other people also serve me up boots and accessories and shoes and that by kind of seeing where that Thursday's there. That means that Thursday knows that I've looked at their website, and so they're giving me comparisons, all right? So now I'm considering 3 or 4 different levels. And finally, I become the customer of Thursday boots. But I am only a trial customer. Right. I did 1 pair of boots. Now, they're trying to get you in to become a lifetime customer, which I have become. Now I have 3 pairs of them, and that's all I wear, and they fit right, and I don't, even though everybody else is hitting me, I have gone through the awareness. I considered them for a while and other ones. And then I bought the first one, which is a trial. And then I became a customer. And now I am a lifetime customer. So now we've kind of put 2 more levels into the funnel. And you can really apply that to any business.
can I put it into a different perspective?
Sure.
Right. So I like to tell stories. I'm a storyteller. So let's think of it in terms of let's take Jim back to his 20s, right? I always say that marketing is like trying to build a relationship with somebody. It's kind of like dating and those types of things. So think of it in terms of this. You walk into a bar or something, and you're a single person looking, obviously for somebody. You walk into a bar and you look around, right? And you become aware of what's in the bar. And then as the night progresses and you're kind of looking around, maybe you make eye contact with somebody and you're like, all right, consideration, right? Like, okay, there's some interest there. We made eye contact and maybe I got a smile. And then, you walk over, you start to talk to this individual and you say, hey, would love to take you out this weekend. Let's go out for dinner. That's kind of the trial, right? Couple weeks later, maybe you've gone out on 3-4 dates, you've almost become kind of like a customer, right? So you like what you're hearing, you're obviously hanging out and all those types of things. But then to take it to that final level, it's that lifetime value level of becoming a customer and repeat purchases and all those types of things. Think of it as marriage, right? So like you met this person, you went out on a date, you went out on a few more dates, maybe a year, 2, 3 years, whatever, go by, and you make the commitment, right? It's the same thing with your boots, right? You're committed to those boots. No one's going to pry those boots off your feet. You love them, right? So it's become your product that you've married into. We all have these types of products. Maybe it's the type of car that you have. Maybe it's the type of clothes that you wear. But that's what we're talking about here is the sales funnel is essentially dating, going from awareness all the way to the lifetime value in terms of, walking into some place, looking around, trying to understand, who's in there that you're interested in. Are they interested in you? You make the connection. You start to date, right? They start to buy things. And in the long run, what you're trying to do is find a certain amount of brands that you can literally stick with for as long as you possibly can, right? So things that you have bought into, brands that you have bought into, that you trust, that you want to be part of your life, right? And like I said, it could be anything from the boots that you wear all the way to the kind of car that you drive, right? I think we all have those 3, 4, 5 different brands in our life that we have been married to. And that's what we're trying to get to when we go through the sales funnel is it's a whole lot easier being married to a brand than it is to go out to a bar and go out and try and find somebody that you're going to marry, right? So it's stick with focusing on how you're satisfying things for your customers and solving those pain points because they'll stick with you long term. It's a whole lot easier than having to go back out to the bar and find new customers over and over and over again.
That is an example many of us can understand. Episode 95, expanding your local marketing sales funnel. He's Matt Hansen. Thanks, Matt. Adriana Alvarez, as always, thank you. And mostly thanks to you. Until next time, we will see you later.